Brilliant. So, hello everyone. This is a look into gaming in the Metaverse, which, as I said, is very exciting for gaming reasons, but also has very real applications for what a lot of you, I think, will be looking to do if you're a business that's entering or looking to enter a version of the Metaverse, or looking to take advantage of the adoption of Web3 technologies, and a whole host of other technologies and both of those terms that I covered earlier this afternoon. So I'm not going to dwell on what we've already covered because we've covered it. We just had a very interesting discussion out there I have with panelists about quite a few weird and wonderful elements of gaming and Metaverse that we might touch upon. So I think this is going to be quite a light-hearted chat more than anything. But maybe a good place to start is literally 10-second introductions for our panelists, just so we know kind of who's up here today, and then we can kind of kick off. So Rob, go ahead.
Sorry, is this? Okay, there we go. Hi, Rob Young. I'm the CEO of a company called Animal Brands. We make games. We're probably the most prolific maker of Web3 games, and we're also the most active investor in Web3. We've invested in about 500 companies over the last 6 years.
I'm techUK. I'm from the investment team at Tencent, which is obviously a huge company in its own right, 1.25 billion users, but also the biggest gaming company in the world. Invested in most of the main Metaverse competitors currently out there.
Hi, I'm Gina Nelson, CEO and art director at socialise Games. We're making a game called Moonfrost, backed by the likes of Supercell and Wodka, different gaming partners, and a couple of others.
Last but not least, hello everybody. I am Tom Bean from tokenised, which is UK's innovation agency, so I provide innovation funding across all different sectors. I specialise in creative industries. I'm the only one in the game sector. So I'm here to add balance. These guys might be more professionals. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I'm also not from the game sector, so don't worry. We had a few more mics that seems to have disappeared. There's one here. Oh, there anybody here? Okay, I think that's all cool. Brilliant. So I think we'll just jump straight in. And I think the first question for my panel is, we've heard a lot about very disruptive technologies, the likes of blockchain, AI, NFTs, cryptocurrencies. How do you see gaming being disrupted by technologies like these over the next 10, 20, etc. years to come? Kind of your headline take on what's in store for the gaming sector. Jump in, whoever. I mean, Robbie, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So I think our view is that the adoption of Web3 is an inevitable part of the infrastructure of the internet, as well as for games. And so our view in why this makes sense and has relevance for games is that historically, for the last decade or more, the predominant business model of gaming has been free to play. And you essentially download and play a game for free, but you spend virtual currency to buy virtual items or to extend your playtime or cosmetics or things like that. And so it's a natural complement, we think, to the idea of Web3, where you can then tokenize those in-game currencies, and you can tokenize that in-game content so that you can offer players true digital ownership or essentially property rights over the things that they buy in games. Because in traditional sort of Web2 games, people are spending money to buy these virtual items, but they don't actually own them because they don't have any rights that typically come with the ownership of property, because they can only do with them what the developer permits them to do, as opposed to having agency over their own property.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing with games is the only constant is change. The industry is constantly evolving, and tech is a huge part of this. So we see 4 things really. Firstly, technology itself, like actual graphics cards is a great example of this. If you look at where NVIDIA are right now, that's pretty much entirely driven by all the work they've done in gaming in the past 20 years. And we see new tech actually creates new genres, and then obviously off the back of that, new user behaviors. So the second part of it is that it's from a creative point of view, you're seeing entirely new things, like 3D graphics allows the creation of first-person shooters, it allows the creation of open worlds. Gamers will always use tech in ways that you don't expect. You can use rocket launchers and crates to jump. You can hang out in Fortnite lobbies. We see huge numbers of users who don't even play the game, they just use it to socialize. The other one, blockchain of course is going to be huge, but Gen AI is going to be absolutely massive for us. We're already seeing it in pictures. Small studios are using it to do concept art, but we're starting to see it on the character side as well. So yeah, I think in terms of disruption, of course, like pretty much any technology will always disrupt games, but games tends to lead rather than to follow.
Just to add to that, I feel like disrupt is a very big word. It's a very powerful word. I'm not really sure that I feel Web3 is going to properly disrupt the industry, but I do think that we have needed a little bit of a reset for a lot of things. At the moment, platforms, as we know, take very large cuts. You've got developers running into a lot of problems when it comes to launching games. Web3 is something that is going to allow us, I think, to see games launching on new platforms and be a lot more in creators' hands, which I do think is very important. I'm not sure if that is a disruption of the industry as such, but it's definitely something that's needed.
I mean, I'm adding to going down the line, so I feel like I have to. I would actually say that's probably the most disruptive thing. I think when it comes to gaming, I agree with the panel, but it's always coming with technology, and in fact, it always uses it, and it enables new experiences, or just new experiences and enhances experiences. I think sort of Web3 technologies will actually help with decentralizing it, removing the need for a platform, and then creating new opportunities for developers, which will really help the UK ecosystem with its sort of like ecosystem of small games companies.
Sure.
Sorry, just to add one thing to put this in perspective, because many of you may not be familiar with the game industry. So the game industry is about $200 billion a year worldwide. It's the largest entertainment medium. It's bigger than all other entertainment mediums combined. That includes feature film, music, television. So gaming is the entertainment industry. That's the big shift that's happened in the last 20 years. So it's not a niche anymore. It's in fact the de facto entertainment medium of culture. And in the UK, gaming is about $7 billion a year.
Brilliant, thanks, Robbie. And yeah, that's very useful context, actually, I think, for this discussion. It's not niche. This is kind of the future of media, and we'll see media converge around gaming in so many ways, and increasingly so. My next question is around specifically gaming in the Metaverse and where we might be seeing this trend start to emerge, any specific examples. So I'm going to ask Teddy to start. I'm going to mix up the order so that we don't just go like up and down over there.
Yeah, so I think just as a level set, like it's not accurate to talk about one metaverse. There's not going to be one. There's going to be many. And in fact, you can go back to Snow Crash and see the way they talk about it. You have the display in the street, and then everyone has their own little bits of that. And that's exactly what's happening already. So we talk about what we call metaverse precursors, which are Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft. And there are many more. There are many people pitching ideas all the time around this. But those are the places where you start to see the behaviors that are going to come to dominate what's happening. The other thing I would say is that this isn't new for us as an industry. People going to virtual worlds and getting married and falling in love and building businesses and every element of human life you can possibly do. This has been happening for 20 years now. So the way that it's spreading now is something that as an industry we've been very familiar with for a very long time. So to talk about it in the sense of what can you do within the metaverse, the answer is absolutely everything. Everything you can do in terms of play outside of it, you can do in real life, you can do in traditional video games, every single thing is going to be possible. And so in Tencent, we talk about it, we do talk about metaverses, but we talk more about what we call hyper digital reality, which is blurring the lines between what happens out here in the kind of flesh space and what happens in the digital space. And for Gen Z and for Gen Alpha beyond that, their digital persona is actually in many ways more real than that persona out here. The way they dress in line, the way they express themselves. For many people, it's actually more important. The two things are not separate. Who they are online and who they are out here is the same thing.
A slightly different perspective. I think the idea of sort of connected ecosystems is something that's been, like you say, around for a very long time. We're seeing companies like Epic building on their Metaverse project with Fortnite, bringing in big concerts and connecting all of their games, that there's an ecosystem. I'm not sure that, to me, that is so much a metaverse, because the concept of a metaverse, for me anyways, very much is at the foundation of all of this, something that connects all of these different pieces together. I think that's something that maybe Web3 is going to enable us to do, is find a way to connect all these different worlds, so that we aren't living in multiple metaverses and multiple worlds and multiple ecosystems, but rather that all of that lies at the foundation for something that is much bigger.
Sure, and just to come in on that, I think interoperability was a key kind of challenge and barrier to overcome that was mentioned earlier in this afternoon, that will be integral to just that, to the free flow of digital assets and people and avatars between the environments.
I think, first of all, I agree with both of you actually, and because I don't think you're saying different things. I think it's just a question of stages of evolution. And to follow on what Gina was saying, I do think in my definition, if you want to call the metaverse with a capital M, it's basically just the aggregate or the sum total of all of the other metaverses that are created. And so we need to find a way to build some connective tissue between them, and that is Web3 in my opinion. But at its most basic level, I think what it provides you is, like, you think about where we live in the world. If the metaverse is the Earth, then Fortnite and Roblox and Moonfrost and all these other games are like countries or like cities on the Earth. But you need to figure out how do you get from place to place. And there may be, maybe you use different power sockets or different currencies in different places, but they coexist because there are translation mechanisms that allow you to change your currency before you go to the other place. Or, you can plug your thing into the socket because you're a voltage converter. And so we're thinking about digital analogs of this, and so that's what we mean when we talk about interoperability. So I think it's very important to have that fundamental base layer of Web3 to get that aggregation discussion started, because we all need to start from a common language. And what we've lacked in Web 2 are common languages, because we tend to always build software in silos. So our goal is to try to figure out how we can bring down the walls between those silos.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think it's a great metaphor. The interoperability stuff is top of mind for us. And we're actually seeing people build businesses in these spaces, in the same way you have like travel concierges in the real world. And people will make plug adapters because there's so much that needs to be done. Historically, games haven't been interoperable. Like taking content from one game to another is very difficult. And Web3 really is the solution to all of that.
I thought I better add at the end. I completely agree, and I think we just need to evolve and move beyond the sort of economics that we have at the moment, Web 2, where we have platforms that are designed to be walled gardens, and I think just some of the attitude that to create this metaverse, if we all believe that it is one connected platform, is to ensure that it is actually interoperable. It has to be driven by the whole of the sector to drive it that way. And we've got to ensure that personalization, sort of like personal data, can easily transfer from one platform to the other, and there's true ownership. And that's probably why companies, industry, government, other regulators need to be working together. It can't be led by one organisation.
Absolutely. Well, that's where techUK could come in if, to work through an organisation such as ourselves to aggregate activity and amplify impact. I want to touch now upon the UK specifically. So I'm conscious that a few of our panelists here obviously in the UK, but Animoca and Tencent are international companies that have a presence in the UK. What is it about the UK that makes us so good at gaming, and where do you see kind of gaming in the metaverse going, specifically within the UK? What is it about where we are here today?
So on the first point about the UK being good at gaming, I think there's actually a bigger question about why is the UK so good at creative industries, full stop. And I think you see it in music, you see it in film, you see it in TV, radio, literature. We punch about our very, very consistently. And I guess you could put that down to natural character, schooling, like all this kind of stuff. But for games specifically in the UK, it goes back to the BBC Micro, the programmable hardware that was very popular back in the 70s, early 80s, I think. I don't actually know the exact years. And then you have a whole generation of programs coming up. And then game studios tend to, they form by cell division. So like a studio will get a hit, and then some people will make some money, and then they will go off and form new studios, which is why you have weird clusters in places like Guildford and Leamington Spa, and now there's that to be a creative industry. So yeah, I mean, from Tencent point of view, of course we won't be here. It's one of the greatest video games countries in the world. It's much easier to make video games in places where the weather is bad. There are no good studios in Australia. Very few in Spain and Italy because you can go outside and do stuff. So yeah, I mean that also helps. Yeah, actually, Iceland, tiny country, loads of world-class studios because it's horrible there.
It's not actually official kind of
That's not Tencent person.
Talk about
Just because I'm really after correctness, that's exactly correct. What's just been said. Whatever is in our natural characteristics, why we're really good at creativity, we are only one of 3 net exporters of music, of film, of games. It's very strange, maybe it's something to do with the weather. But importantly, when it comes to the game sector, we actually are a nation of gamers. I haven't got the stats to hand, but like the proportion of gamers in this country is comparable to the highest in the world. And just look at the normal stats of esports. And the amount of esports participation in players, I think we are the highest in the world as well. So it's that kind of mixture that we're very good at making games, and also we are our own customers, so we actually know what we do, and that kind of drives us, and it means that we're probably, and looking at esports, which is like the cutting edge of where the game sector is going, is a much growing part of the sector, which arguably could be part of the Metaverse, puts us in a fantastic place to be a leader and to drive what the future of the Metaverse is.
Part of this is very much legacy, though, isn't it? Because the industry here evolved and developed in a certain way, and because of all of that, it's a hub, right? I'm an immigrant. I moved to the UK for the games industry because there were more opportunities here. I think something that I loved about the industry here, and especially in places like London, Brighton, Guildford, is just how much cultural diversity there is within studios. That's something that you don't find in a lot of places. There are a lot of people coming together offering unique perspectives. But at the same time, I think, and it's something that we found, especially after the pandemic, was that COVID really taught us that digital industries do not require offices. My studio is a fully remote studio. We are offering opportunities to people all over the world. And it's something that I think is very special, and it's something that I'm hoping a lot of other studios are going to be doing as well, because you do not need to be in London to work for a studio that is based in London. Right now, we're still the biggest industries here, but I would say it's very much a legacy thing, I think, and I do imagine that that's going to change over time.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned physical presence within all of this. I think one key element that we haven't exactly touched on today, I think, is or at least still enough detail, I think, is the infrastructure behind Web3, Metaverse, gaming in Metaverse. So when you look at compute, for example, data centers in the UK, what capacity do we have, 5G networks, that sort of thing. So maybe that would be a good kind of place for this conversation to go. Do you think that the UK is well equipped to make the most of emerging technologies in Metaverse or Web3 and gaming? Robbie, I have a strong opinion.
So I think, first of all, I agree with the legacy game industry in the UK is legendary, right? And a lot of that comes from great famous IPs that were created on console, games like Lara Croft, right? All the way up through Candy Crush more recently. Although keep in mind, Candy Crush is more than a decade old, and there have not been any Candy Crushes since, so that should be concern for pause. I think one thing about the gaming industry is it tends to do very well in places that where government supports it. So it does well in the UK, it does well in Finland, it does well in Catalonia despite the weather. It does very well in Canada. It does reasonably well in Australia because there are government grants to support entrepreneurialism and to support risk-taking. The best of those would be, in my opinion, the techUK grants in Finland, where essentially you just send in a letter and fill in an online form, and they send you 250,000 euros to give something a shot. And it's a loan. If you go out of business, you don't have to pay it back. But if you survive after those 6 months, you have to pay it back. It's money. And if you think about it, you give away 100 of those, what is the cost of that to a government? But it provides a tremendous ecosystem. And here in the UK, we have game tax credits, as some of you may be aware, where essentially you can get back a certain portion of your payroll in tax credits. Somebody like me, I get nothing. I employ 40 people in this country, but because it's hooked to developing IP in this country, the fact that I have payroll and spend money here and employ people doesn't actually qualify me for anything. I'm not saying I should qualify for something, but I do think that these are loopholes that need to be addressed, because I think it's a part of a wider problem of making it difficult for businesses in general, small businesses, to set up shop in the UK. My own personal anecdote would just be when we showed up here with kind of cash in hand and a mandate to hire people, it was really hard. It took like 9 months to get business linked, to get bank accounts. Don't even get me started about sponsoring a visa for somebody, even though I'd already hired 35 British people. It's incredibly cumbersome. And we're headquartered in Hong Kong, where I could have done the same thing in 48 hours. Sorry,
How fantastic Finland's innovation agency is, techUK. Another scheme. Just want to plug that we actually have a scheme called Great Catalyst, which is 50k grants. You don't have to get the money back. However successful you are, and that's currently open. So if you just Google Creative Catalyst, you'll see the opportunities for the game.
Which I wasn't aware of, so apologies.
No. You were in the briefing events. But also, I do want to underline that the tax credit system, tax relief system for the game sector, I remember when it was introduced and the rationale for it. We have a very strong sector, it's getting more competitive out there. It has recently been reviewed at the enhanced year, and it actually has proven just how much economic benefit it adds to the UK system. So I think with the tax relief, with the fact that there is opportunities for innovation, just for the sector, does actually help. Hopefully should de-risk some more innovative play. As well as that, it would be remiss for me, because it sits in the team as well, that the UK government has invested in future telecoms, so 5.5G, advanced 5G, 6G, so we just had an investment of 22 million pounds, and that's just going to be released soon. So, and there's been quite a few projects that do work and integrate into Metaverse and the game sector, which makes sense because we're investing in the UK, and it's a very important sector for the UK.
Also, just to say, I think probably now more than ever, if anyone's aware of what's going on in the games industry, this is more important now than I think it's ever been in my entire career in the games industry. We're seeing studios shutting down left, right, and centre. We're seeing layoffs of people who are absolutely exceptional in what they do. There are not enough jobs at the moment for people who are making games, despite how much revenue this industry brings in, despite how big this industry is. These people have got to go somewhere, right? This is talent that has to go somewhere. It's a very unique opportunity for new startups and new companies to form new projects to come out of all of this, but it's only going to happen with support. And this is something that is needed now.
Absolutely. Well, it's something techUK will be looking into, advising government on a report on gaming that we're publishing in May. So stay tuned for that and check out our innovation hub to find out more. There we go, enthusiasm for techUK. So I'd like to turn now to the question that's probably on a lot of people's minds as we enter the kind of final 10-minute mark, which is AI. So at the start of the afternoon, I gave that stat, which was I think 688% growth in AI companies within the UK in the past 10 years. And obviously that will have huge implications for Metaverse, Web3 and gaming. Do you have a take on, okay, there's an awful lot of hype around it, but do you see it as a transformative technology, particularly, I guess, generative AI in game development and, or is, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about my job, and you probably have this as well, is that we get to see a lot of stuff from different companies. We get to see a lot of pitches, like all the different ideas people have. And at any given point, you go to the big conferences, GDC, Gamescom, and you see there's certain things fashionable at a time. And some of it is flash in the pan, and some of it is not. And AI is definitely not. The first version of it was people, rather than people talking about it, they were actually using it straight away. So you see small studios using basic image generation tools to do concept art. Okay, cool, that's easy. That's a way of saving money. Obviously it has some downsides as well. But already we're starting to see really cool new stuff in terms of non-player characters, in terms of world generation. And I think with the metaverse stuff, but with games in generally, like, costs of this is very, very high. It's very expensive to generate good digital environments, and anything that can save money, anything that can make that more streamlined, save time is welcome. Procedural generation in games is not new, but there's certainly a lot more stuff you can do with AI than you could do before. I don't think it's going to have a negative effect on us in terms of jobs. It's obviously one of the concerns. I think that these technologies tend to produce as many new jobs as they destroy jobs. But yeah, for us, like, some of the pictures we're seeing now are incredibly creative. And anytime something like this happens, there's this excitement where you're like, you don't know what the big thing's going to be, what the next cool thing's going to be, what's the GTA of AI, what's the Minecraft of AI. But we know there is something just around the corner. Somewhere right now in this country, there's a little talented team who've got some crazy ideas that are going to be worth billions. The question is just finding them. First, ladies first. Okay.
I think that following AI has been very interesting. It's been crazy, just the growth that's happened there. I see it very much as a tool, though, and I think that in the hands of experts who know what they're doing, it's a very powerful tool. For me, it's something that I view very much in the same way as cameras on your smartphone, right? Every single person in this room has got a camera in their hands, in their pockets. Does not make you a very good photographer necessarily. I think AI is something very similar in the same way. It's something it's a tool that's going to allow a lot of people to create something very quickly. But when it's being used by people who really know what they're doing, that's where it's going to be interesting. That's where it's going to be something that comes into our pipelines, into our processes, makes things easier for us, and helps us produce quality products quickly without taking away jobs, without any of that. We still need people who know what they're doing.
Maybe if I could just give a quick anecdote, because I feel like my last comment was a bit of a downer. So I was at a dinner with some very well-established people from the tech community in the UK, and they were talking about DeepMind, which is probably the most famous AI company to come out of the UK. And the UK has incredible public, I want to say academic private partnership situations. So all of the major universities, particularly the ones in London, have incredible AI departments, UCL, Imperial, King's, everybody. And something like DeepMind was only able to be done because of those public-private academic partnerships. Because the thing is, if Demis had gone to Silicon Valley and asked for funding for DeepMind, nobody would have given it to him, or they would have cut him off after 3 years. Because for Santol Road, if you don't show a return in 5 to 7 years, that's the fund life cycle. You get your lifeline cut off. And DeepMind took 10 years. And you have to have that kind of time horizon. You need to have some public sector involvement, academic involvement, because these are really generational technologies. And so that's one of the reasons that actually the UK has been particularly good on this issue.
Yeah, we have some examples. I think we don't have that many tech unicorns in the creative industries. As a Synthesis one, that is AI-based synthetic media, and they span out of UCL. We've also got dancing, which is AI music again. They were based on the PhD that the CEO also brothers PhD. So just we can actually trace where the sports come. They have that time to sort of like be incubated and take over. And just on one comment about is it fashion and that's the man that invested in immersive 5 years ago and got a little bit burned, but it didn't return what it did. Seeing companies and AI and seeing the investors come in, I can see right from front, right now, I can see the return on investment, I can see the productivity boost. I am involved in a lot of conversations about copyright. It's quite interesting. I think it will get sorted out. AI does seem to be a mechanism of paying copywriters, but it forgets to do that bit, so it's great new products. But one thing we are forgetting is how Gen AI can actually help creators write code, so it can actually work the other way. So we're actually being able to enable the most creative people to actually put their ideas into code, maybe develop computer games. That becomes less of a barrier as much as it makes it easier to create creativity.
And maybe to follow on the previous comments about, we see a lot of deals. And the thing about AI that has really struck me most is that the pace of change is something I've never seen before in 30 years of tech. Meaning that you actually see generational progress in what the tech can do every 3 months by my count. and it's right, just staggering. Whereas microprocessors or bandwidth or mobile bandwidth, all of these things take a year at a time, 2 years at a time. There's Moore's law. But AI, you turn around 60 days later, you see something that you thought it was going to take them a year to do it, and that is actually quite astounding.
Well, kind of where to begin. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that at techUK, certainly our AI team has doubled in size in the past 2 months. And we've been doing AI for about 7 or 8 years now. So it's a huge area of not just industry interest, but also just kind of raw potential. And we're kind of seeing through the hype, and there's a lot of very interesting applications for the industry now. Tom, I think you missed out a tech unicorn in creative industries in the UK. Did I?
Well, I did mention improbable. Who
No, it's OnlyFans.
Yeah.
I think we were. Tom was having a good conversation back there before this panel began about.
No, I just said that they were
Underappreciated.
we don't talk about them because of the content. But they are a great platform.
I'll rescue Tom. So the conversation here was basically about the fact because I made a flippant although true remark, which is this porn drives innovation and technology. So if you look at every platform going back to the video game, online payments, SSL, all of these things were developed for the adult industries. So if you want to see where innovation is, look at the adult industries because it's the one kind of content that leads entertainment adoption, always.
Okay, bring us back. I think, on that note, I think we can end with just a few final thoughts from each panelist, maybe a sentence or two as to sum up what you see as the kind of key opportunity for gaming in the metaverse in the future, and why industry who's here today and who will be watching this on the Innovation Hub should care. So maybe let's go in order. Robbie, shall I start?
So I'm extremely excited because I do think that Web3 presents a generational change for the gaming industry, particularly not dissimilar to when mobile platforms were developed and mobile completely transformed gaming, doubled the size of the industry, expanded the types of people who could have careers in gaming, and expanded, obviously Google and Apple built very large businesses around them and were not really involved in gaming prior. And so I think Web3 offers that, but it also offers it in a much more diverse and inclusive way, because I think it's much more startup and innovation friendly. The barriers to entry to being able to build a Web3 business are actually, in my opinion, much lower than a Web2 business that's largely consolidated amongst large platforms. So I'm very excited about that, and I would encourage people who are not involved in it, the first and most important thing is become a player. So find a game, sign up, try it, have some fun.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think mobile is really the only good comparison. And before that, to find this kind of step change, you have to look at the shift from arcade to consoles. It's that level of the move. I think this is a really good time to invest. Not just invest money, which obviously is a good time to do that, but invest time. And like what we said, play games, learn about them. This is not just a hobby for some people. Every kid plays, and if you get left behind by this, it's going to be like old man who can't use an iPad. You don't want to be in that situation. So find a game and play it. Also read about this, watch videos online. Talk to the younger generation, hear about what they're doing, how they're using these spaces, because it's not as simple as they're playing games. In the way you traditionally think about it, they use them to socialise. It's where they live now.
I think something I'm very excited about is how Web3 has sparked a lot of new ideas, a lot of new ways of thinking. People aren't afraid to try things out and fail. And that's something that I don't think we've seen for a very long time. For the longest time, there have been these formulas of, I make a game, I do it this way, I put it on this platform, it hopefully makes money, or it doesn't, I market it like this and this and this. And then suddenly Web3 is allowing us to think in different ways. I don't think we've quite cracked it just yet. I think there's a lack of quality products right now. I think there's a lot of focus which is too much on the tech side and less on what we're offering to consumers and what we're offering to players, which ultimately means we have Web3 players as opposed to just players. And I think this sort of mass adoption is going to come over time, but I am excited to see what new thinkers are going to be coming up with over the next few years.
And I'll just mention about how the game sector can help others. There's been a report by UKI, which is the trade association of the game sector last year, which sort of like counted the impact that the game sector has to other sectors, the spillover benefit, which is roughly £750 million per year. So that's games technologies, game methodologies that actually spill over and benefit other sectors. Now, working the assumption, this is the assumption I'm building, which is the metaverse is a gaming medium, that there's going to be far greater business development opportunities, transferable skills where the game sector can actually develop and support other sectors as they build their metaverse products.
Fantastic. Well, final thing to say, if you're interested in gaming, Web3 and Metaverse, please get in touch with me. I'm giving my business card, rory.daniels@techuk.org. And without further ado, can we all give my panelists a huge round of applause?